All right, everybody. So, for the last year and a half, and I'd say that's a pretty accurate time frame, we've seen transphobic rhetoric in particularly America and the UK get far more violent than it has been in previous years. You see, from like the Gamergate era to 2019 to 2020, 2022, that area, the type of transphobic rhetoric that we would see about trans people mostly centered around the idea that trans people are unfortunate victims of mental illness, and that, like, as long as they're adults, let them transition, do what they want, because, you know, it's America. But if it's a kid, then you can't let them transition because that's allowing them to accept mental illness or to do what mental illness wants them to do. It really makes no sense. They have wording for it that makes it sound smart, but when you actually say what they're arguing, it doesn't make any sense. It's very important to remember this. Regardless, that was the most radical argument that mainstream right-wing figures would make or would say, like, generally speaking. That was what they would do, right? They would always go to that. That was the most radical they would say on the mainstream platforms. However, time's passed, and we have seen the rhetoric, the transphobic rhetoric, get more and more violent, or I should say more and more implicitly violent, because you see, there aren't that many large popular transphobic figures outright saying we need to commit violence against trans people and take away their rights, but they're saying things that would only naturally lead the people hearing it to that conclusion. So right now, the most popular take is that trans people are not just mentally ill, unfortunate, yada yada yada, but that it is a social illness that is being groomed into children by adults who are pedophilic and trying to achieve some sort of sexual perversion by being trans. That is essentially the overarching, like, that is as much of like the umbrella narrative that I can, you know, fit into one sentence, right? It's far more radical than what they were saying a few years ago, and it is far more violent than what they were saying a few years ago, even if it doesn't directly call for violence. Because use your brain for a moment. Use your brain for a moment. What do people naturally do when told that there is a group of people out there who are pedophiles that are grooming your kids into, like, a bunch of shit they're afraid of? The natural response to that is violence. That's the response. Violence. That's how it happens. Let's read this. Because it's happened. Again, because it's been happening a lot more lately, violence has been occurring against the trans community. There was the club shooting that happened recently. But here's something a little bit more personal and a bit more disgusting. So this is a story coming out of Britain, all right? And as I said, this rhetoric has been getting very popular in both America and in the UK. Particularly in the UK, we have seen hate coming from the TERF groups against the trans community become the most prominent. There's something about, like, bigotry in the UK where it seems to take the veil of, like, progressivism a lot more commonly than it does here. Like, it seems like the best way to sell British people on bigotry is to veil it in, like, a wrapping of wokeness, while to sell people on something in America, you just have to make it seem apolitical. Does that make sense? Regardless, anyway, the story comes out of Britain, and it is disgusting. 2 teenagers charged in murder of girl in Britain. The police said 2 15-year-olds were charged with murder on Wednesday after Brianna Ghey, a transgender 16-year-old, a transgender woman who was 16 years old, a child, was fatally stabbed in a park. 2 teenagers were charged with murder on Wednesday in the death of Brianna Ghey, a 16-year-old transgender girl who was found fatally stabbed in a park in northwest England, the local police said. The police said that Brianna was found with multiple stab wounds on Saturday in Linear Park in Culcheth, England. I think that's how Culcheth, England, a village that sits between Liverpool and Manchester. Brianna went to school in the town of Birchwood, about 3 miles from the park, and both teenagers charged in the case are from nearby towns, the police said. The girl who was charged is 15 and from Warrington, and the boy who is charged is also 15 and is from Lee. The local police, the Cheshire Constabulary, said in a statement, they appeared at Chester Magistrates Court in Chester, England on Wednesday, the police said in an email. The district judge, John McGarver, refused bail for the teenagers and sent them back to youth detention. The Guardian reported. The 15-year-olds were ordered to appear at Liverpool Crown Court on Thursday morning. English law prohibits the release of details, including names, that could identify people under 18 who are involved in court proceedings, so we do not know these people's identities. The police said on Tuesday that they were pursuing all lines of investigation, including whether the stabbing was a hate crime. It almost certainly was. There's not a lot of cases in which this was a non-hate, like bigotry-motivated attack. 15-year-olds don't stab to death 16-year-olds and leave their bodies in the park for many other reasons than deliberate, like, premeditated hate murder. Like, that's what that is. Brianna was found on a path in the park on Saturday by members of the public who called emergency services at 3:13 p.m. local time, the police said. She was pronounced dead on the scene. Brianna's family said in a statement that she was a much-loved daughter, granddaughter, and baby sister. She was a larger-than-life character who would leave a lasting impression on all that met her, her family said. Brianna was beautiful, witty, and hilarious. Vigils were held for Brianna on Tuesday night in Liverpool and Bristol, and there were more than 24 other vigils planned for her later in the week in England, Scotland, Northern Ireland, and Ireland. Oh yeah, two different places. More than £89,000 or $107,000 has been raised in an online fundraiser verified by GoFundMe to help her family with funeral costs. She's brought a lot of laughter to those who knew her, she said. Said the fundraiser's organizers, Victoria and Jacob Potter. She was looking forward to taking her exams this year and beginning her journey into the adult world. This young girl was at the edge of adulthood, about to take a foray into the world and live her life. She had her whole life in front of her. She was 16 years old, and she was murdered by 2 other kids in a park. It's not in this particular article, but I read some other articles about this, and the police, who investigated her murder, said that her attack was quote-unquote brutal. This wasn't a, like, I don't even know how to describe it, like a calculated, precise killing. This was a killing that was done with hate and with vitriol, and it was a violent killing. It was a hate-filled killing. Probably premeditated. I find it hard to believe this wasn't driven by hate. And I find it hard to believe that it wasn't in some part driven by the hate that's being spread by these large, prominent, transphobic figures in the UK and in America. In the UK, you have TERFs who are actively quoting Hitler and Mein Kampf. Can we find that? TERF, Mein Kampf. Let's see if I can find that. Popular TERF figure in the UK.
Lie. Do you know the big lie? The big lie was first described by Adolf Hitler in Mein Kampf. The big lie is such a big lie that ordinary people like us think, well, that can't be a lie, because I'd never tell any as big a lie as that. We only lie in small ways. The big lie, well, there is one big lie going on, and it was begun by men in the early part of the 20th century. It was began when they had an erotic fantasy, and they decided they were going to sell us the big lie. And what is the big lie? The big lie is trans women are lie.
Yeah. So when that is the type of rhetoric, the type of hate-filled fucking propaganda being spewed in your country, here too, as well, it's just different. We have like right-wing culture war figures that push this shit, but over there it's this attempt to make hating trans people, pushing violent rhetoric towards trans people who are just trying to live their lives and do their thing, trying to make it look like it's woke. That is what they're trying to do, by the way. They're trying to make it look like it's woke. That accepting trans women, notably they leave out trans men and non-binary people in their talks, but that trans women being accepted is a violation upon women. And to be a good feminist, to care about women's rights, and to be against misogyny, you have to be against trans women. They're trying to make that the only option. You're either pro-trans or pro-woman. That is what they're trying to make the option that you have as a society. It is a false dichotomy. It is a false dichotomy. There is nothing about trans acceptance, trans rights, or trans validity that invalidates cis women's rights, cis women's advocacy, or cis women's validity. There's nothing about it. There's no contradiction there. The only people trying to say that there are contradictions there are the people who are trying to twist it and make you hate people who are just trying to live their lives and do their own thing. This girl did not deserve to fucking die, and all these right-wing fucking propagandists, if this is deemed to have been a hate crime, and I think it was, if it is definitively deemed to be a hate crime, we will know that these right-wing figures, these hate-spewing fucking toilets, living toilets, they are behind this. They are behind the violence that is being done upon these LGBT people, these innocent people that are just trying to live their lives, whether it be what happened in Colorado recently or what happened to Brianna Ghey. Okay, so getting off of that, there is a second half to all of this. There's a second half to all of this that's happening, okay? Twitter is a platform where a lot of activism, I guess you could say, if you want to call it that, happens, okay? A lot of people make hashtags and use Twitter to help raise awareness about something that's happening. So in response to this, a bunch of people on Twitter who were mourning the passing of Brianna Ghey decide to make Say Her Name trend. Say her name, Brianna Ghey. Say her name, right? This is in reference to the fact that early on, a bunch of media covering her was either using her dead name or including her dead name. I actually don't know what her dead name is because I didn't read that stuff, but I wouldn't say it if I knew it. But yes, that was a bit of an issue that was happening when all of this first started. So there you go, another good example of how our society treats trans people. Even when dead, you can't even know. Even when murdered, by the way. Sorry, even when murdered, you can't guarantee you won't be dead named by massive media outlets. Anyway, they get Say Her Name trending, right? And a bunch of narcissistic cunts, and that's all I can really say, just a bunch of narcissistic cunts that unfortunately managed to get nearly 40,000 likes in this post, decide to come out and say, I'm going to read you just one of these tweets. A bunch of them got a bunch of other tweets are out there like this. Jesse Gender posted one like it as well, I believe. Anyway, it goes as follows. Say Her Name is trending because people are using it for Brianna Ghey, who is white. And I need y'all to understand that that phrase / hashtag was created for black women who are victims of police violence. I've seen white people say that they didn't know this, and that's extremely troubling because that means y'all genuinely do not care about black women, particularly black trans women. I'm going to be very frank. One of the reasons why we aren't where we should be in terms of infrastructure fighting against transphobia is because people have accepted the systems that facilitate black death because y'all assumed it wouldn't come for you. 35,000 likes. 35,000 likes. I want you to realize here that this is a narcissist who has just used the death of a 16-year-old girl to get 35,000 likes on Twitter. And to feel like they're morally superior to white trans people. Right now, and I also want you to realize that the thing they are complaining about, even if this was somehow in some way actually genuine and actually sincere, 35.7 thousand people liked a tweet diverting the attention from the fact that a 16-year-old trans woman was murdered to a discussion about the correct use of a Twitter hashtag. Do you guys understand what I mean now when I say that these people live on social media? They have no other priorities than preserving and living in the little online social space that they've created and that they want to foster. This is genuinely a disgusting display of the left's tendencies. A disgustingly accurate display of the left's tendencies. To try to turn the death of a 16-year-old trans girl who was murdered in what was likely a hate crime into an opportunity to make yourself feel morally superior. Not only that, by the way, but we've seen conservatives obviously celebrating the death of Brianna Ghey. They have been absolutely frothing at the mouths with happiness about this, talking like they just love it. They absolutely have been celebrating it if you haven't already seen it on Twitter and whatnot. And some of these posts are getting thousands of likes. Some of them will just be a post with a gravestone with like her name on it, and it'll just say, haha, another one down, and it'll have like 5,000 likes. And you know what? These people aren't going after those accounts, those right-wing accounts that are currently using their platform on the largest platform in the world, which is Twitter, to gloat about the death of a trans child. Xanderhall searched their tweets for the name of any victim of police violence in the last decade. The only person they mentioned was George Floyd, and that was to say that basically recording injustice encouraged the surveillance state. It could very well be possible they haven't been on Twitter that long, but looked to me that they haven't said a single name yet. No, these accounts do not focus on advocating for left-wing ideas. These accounts are only focused on dunking on other left-wing figures to feel morally superior. They don't attack the right. They don't go after the right. It's not what they do. Disgusting what they've done here, though. And I think it's a perfect example of how disgusting the woke scolds really are. Anyway, it goes without saying, but rest in power to Brianna Ghey. And this kind of stuff should motivate you to want to fight against the hateful rhetoric that these people are pushing, because I can confirm that it inspires me to want to fight against it, and I hope it does the same for you, because that's really the only silver lining I can think of from all of this. With all that said, thank you so much for watching, and have a good one.